Hi guys, how are you? So nice to connect to you. Welcome to this channel and welcome to this video. My name is Laura. This is Pleiadian Healer from Pleiadianhealer.com. And today we are going to be talking about a very important topic, which I think could be of interest to a lot of people, or which some people may or may not have their own experience with, and which some people may be going through, as you may or may not be losing people around you right now in the sense of actual deaths. Could be related to 2020, could just be related to other things like accidents and so on. So today we're going to be talking about the tunnel of light concept and being recycled over and over again, being lured to reincarnate into the next lifetime, or just in general going through the reincarnation trap, through the recycling trap. I know there are quite a few videos out there already by other people, and a lot of them are obviously by New Age trap specialists, so New Agers who are telling you to perhaps go down that tunnel of light. Religion, specifically Christianity, also likes to tell people that you need to go down there and then you're going to be in heaven or whatever. But let's just pull up an image of this wonderful tunnel of light just so we have it as a reference, while I'll just share my own insight and thoughts. So this would be a perfect example of the tunnel of light that some people may be experiencing, especially if you had like a near-death experience already, which I'm sure some of you may have had, you know, when you were in a hospital or had an accident or whatever already. So near-death experiences are basically exit points that you set yourself. And those can just be that you have more than one during a lifetime. Typically, people have more than one during a lifetime. You know, they have like an exit point when they're a certain age, and then you can decide, okay, do I want to still be in this body, or do I literally just want to kind of exit this world somehow? There's nothing freaky about it. I myself have experienced at least one exit point as well. I talked about it in a live, I think 1 or 2 years ago. It had to do with the car accident and everything. So in and of itself, there's nothing freaky with an exit point. Is it all free will? I don't think so necessarily. They're just kind of giving us these options for us to take. Let's put it that way. But exit points, in the essence of it, are points in your life when your soul can decide, I want to pass on, I want to die, and move on to what's next. And what's typically next is getting stuck again in the next lifetime, being reincarnated in yet another body in the same reincarnation trap, in the same world that we're currently in. So let's just go through some concepts. Let's just go through the concept of, you know, so we're living our lives right now in whatever reincarnation you're living at, whether or not you're a man, a woman, a child, an adult, a teenager. And so we're living our lives mostly predetermined by others, though. I do want to point that out. So how much your life is your own free will really be up to you, how awake you are, awake to the concept that you are able to manifest a whole lot of things in your life. You are able to break out of that box that's given to you from day one, you know, depending on the country you're born in, the culture you're born in, all of those things. It can be extremely hard to break out of that, right? So language barriers are a huge one when you're born in a country that doesn't speak, for example, English or other languages that are pretty universal, like Spanish or French or whatever. It can be very hard to kind of having to teach everything, or going to school and having to do all of those things. And sometimes you may be born in a country, let's just be very extreme, like Africa or in a third world country, where you're not even going to have the means to really break out of that unless you really, really want to, right? So it's kind of a life against all odds is what I'd like to call that. So there's a lot that goes into that, but I do think a lot of our lives are predetermined by other entities around us, by other controllers that control this matrix game. A lot of us are being kept down. You know, we have like this full blooming potential from day one that we're born into this world. Like we can basically be the top doctor out there if you want to be that. You can be a top lawyer out there if you really want that. You can make a flowing income with the travel business, all of that. But unfortunately, a lot of our people who have souls, so a lot of these souls, not talking about clone bodies or robotoids or whatever, but actual souls are being kept down severely as soon as they discover their passion and have a little bit of success in it, because the controllers don't want you to basically live a life that's really meant for you. They want to siphon off your energy and harvest your energy and incorporate it into the corporate system, which is like corporate companies, or like the rat race is what I like to call it, especially here in New York. They used to call it the rat race, meaning like working 14 hours a day or 16 hours a day. And that was great because you're pretty much like, you don't have a life outside of that, right? So all your energy goes into work, 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 or when you're very young, it goes into school, 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 into basically just, you know, being in the program at the instance of it, being under their control. And that's basically what they want. They don't want you to think outside of the box. They don't want you to even have time to kind of connect to your own soul essence and everything. So you're living these lives that are basically predetermined from the start, right? So they're giving us these lives, and aging is a program. I do want to make a different video on that. Unlike Dolores Cannon says, which I kind of dissected her untruths and New Age programs in a different video, we did not volunteer to come here. I have a video series on how we were tricked to come here, and basically we were lured to come here. This was eons ago, could have very well been like 1 billion years ago. But for me, the time frame right now is not much of an essence, because they're messing with our time to such an extent that right now we even feel we're running out of time, or we're aging more quickly than we used to like 10 years ago. So it could have been 2,000 years ago, it could have been 1 billion years ago, however long it was that we were tricked to come here on this earth realm. We just kind of forgotten ourselves so much in the game that they provided us, the video game, the Matrix game. And, you know, every time we enter, something's being done to our capabilities of remembering. So basically it's the veil that comes over and over and over again. And we've completely forgotten ourselves in the game. I do think a lot of it has to do with Atlantis too, and the AI that was created during that time. Other beings who maybe came later, maybe just a few hundred years ago or whatever, they could have been tricked here under different pretenses, or some people commented on my video saying they think they were enslaved here, like literally dragged from a different system somehow over here. That could have been. I know for me that wasn't necessarily the case. I definitely came here with a group of beings or souls, and we were all kind of tricked to come here. It was sold to us as a nice vacation time on Earth, which that turned into a very long vacation. And so then we're at the end of our lives, however old we are. We could be very well only a teenager. We could very well be 100 years old. However old we are, though, that's when we pass away, be it under natural causes or unnatural causes. And so this is where the game starts over and over again. So you've lived this life, which for a lot of people has been very difficult, and they are making our lives more and more difficult. The more we progress in the game. I do think perhaps a few hundred years ago, our lives weren't as difficult as now. Now we're being bombarded with, you know, cell phones, Wi-Fi, EMF, with a whole bunch of distractions. We can barely even hold our attention on the screen for more than like a few seconds until I mean, ADHD is all over the place, right? Even in adults. So it's a bit extreme what we're being bombarded with right now. I do think it may have been easier for my grandparents' generation for sure, because having less could also equal being more happy in a weird, twisted way, which you see that a lot in third world countries, right? Like the people that actually have the least amount of electronics and the least amount of money are the happiest, because they just they're working with what they have. And so the more abundant our nations get, or the more stuff that's being thrown at us and sold as us that we need, you know, like kids need an iPad and yada yada, the more trapped we kind of become in this reality through our soul pieces also being trapped in these electronics, and our attention's going away, attention spans for sure. So we're at the end of our life and we pass away. And then typically, from what I've gotten so far, however, this doesn't happen all the time. I also want to point that out. I've seen that very clearly with people who have taken their very own life. It doesn't happen all the time that you see this tunnel of light. Sometimes your soul is so confused, especially if you have, you know, taken your own life, because that's usually very traumatizing experience, as I mentioned in a different video. Your soul is like so confused that somehow this black comes over you somehow. Sometimes they could see the tunnel of light and just not go towards it because they're kind of freaked out by it. But at the end of the day, you see something like this. Whether or not it looks like this exactly, or if it's just like a ladder leading up to something that resembles light, or if it's really like something that even resembles source that they want to sell to us as source, you kind of have to just see it as another matrix construct that they're pushing on you. Now in this picture, it's a man going towards the light, but obviously the gender doesn't matter. But yeah, so you're supposed to be going towards the light. I do feel they may be pushing like this false sense of love and happiness once you get closer and closer to the light, which on a soul level kind of entices you to go closer, let's put it that way. So they're having a whole bunch of programs around the light and the tunnel of lights, you know, like life after death and everything. Some people have said they've seen Jesus, which is just another entity that's saying they're Jesus, but they're really not Jeshua, who was reincarnated here. Some people say they see angelic beings with wings, ascended masters, perhaps, if you're really into that. A big one is seeing relatives that passed on already, though. So, for example, if you had like a mother or dad, a child or a grandparent or whatever already pass away, you might see a version of them. I really highly doubt it's them, though. I do want to point that out too. They may seem like them, but it could very well be just like a gray or an interdimensional entity and being that is basically just putting up a front, like having a mask on and pretending it's them, because the chance is very high that your relative already reincarnated in the next body and their soul is not really kept in the astral in that way. So what I've also heard from some reports of people who had a near-death experience, there was this one boy who saw Jesus and everything. He was pretty good. Like 20 years ago, his story was really pushed. And that's how you also know when all these things are pushed in the mainstream media, not just the New Age movement, but also mainstream, that's how you know they want to trap you there. But this boy who was maybe 6 or 7 years old he saw Jesus, and that everyone looked very, very young in heaven, or once he passed the tunnel of light or whatever. Also a whole lot of animals. Now I posted something recently on my social media saying that animals actually do have that pure connection to source, and you can sometimes see it in their eyes as well, unless they're not entity possessed. But I kind of doubt that you would be. I mean, the animals that you see are not really the animals that really have that source connection. So it's probably just another projection of an animal or whatever. So they're throwing all this stuff at you. And I'm just mentioning all these so that you kind of know what to expect. Okay. But in the essence of it, you're going to see a tunnel of light like we see here in the picture. You might see a whole lot of these other beings, like deceased loved ones. Everyone could very well look very young, because young and not aging is, you know, it corresponds with being attractive and being liked and wanted and everything. So it's not surprising that everyone is supposed to be young once you pass on. They will try to lure you down, you know, like I said, with this fake feeling of love and peace and happiness and you're going to have it so good once you come down here, and it's so great to be here. Like all those other deceased loved ones are going to be waving at you and trying to lure you down, being like, it's amazing to be here. So they really are going to be throwing a whole bunch of stuff at you. Okay. And then you're going to be somewhere which is going to be different for different types of people. It could be a resting place. It could very well be what they want to sell you as heaven or whatever. For some people, if you believe in hell, you might very well end up in a version of hell, somewhere where it just feels like hell with a lot of fire around you, like the underworld experience, but then you're going to get out of that. From some reports, you might have to judge yourself and the life you led. And then it always comes back to, oh, you weren't good enough in the previous life. So you have to come back and rectify something, rectify karma that you have with other people or other souls. You maybe have to help other people out in the next lifetime that are still stuck here in this life, so you have to reincarnate pretty much right away. So we're going to go to her Facebook page and go through a few of the quotes that are on there. This is her Facebook page in tribute of Dolores Cannon, 1931 to 2014. Once again, she looks like a nice woman. I'm not saying she's an awful, evil woman, absolutely not, but I do feel she was misguided somehow, and she was maybe channeling a whole bunch of entities that were putting these into the 10 million books that she has. And that information is misguiding people nowadays. And that's something I do hold against people like her, because it is not helpful, to go down that agenda. So this is the prime example that I had in my other video too. Every time a child is born, an ancestor returns. Doesn't this sound so amazing? Wow. Oh my gosh, I'm reborn over and over again. How amazing is that? What a nightmare is that? You are trapped in the reincarnation loop and cycle, and you have no idea how to get out of it, is what I'm reading into that. In addition to you maybe being born into your grandkid's child or whatever, and you having to endure that family's karma or whatever over and over again, instead of maybe starting over somewhere else, like in a different part of the world, right? So yeah, it sounds like a huge nightmare, but they're kind of wrapping it up in this New Age thing. Some quotes are from her. I think other quotes might just be from the page. So this is one of her quotes though. Earth is a school for mastering how to manipulate energy. I'm pretty sure you can do that outside of Earth as well. Just putting that out there. And second, Earth is not a school. So I have, I might have to make a video on it, but I do have a video on how you were trapped here, how you were trapped on Earth. That was in April 2021 when I made that video. You did not volunteer to come here. You were lured under false pretenses that you're going to come here from wherever you were, in your soul group or alone, depends on the person. And then the veil came down. AI created something like this, like the mess we're in, the matrix we're in. And we just keep forgetting ourselves over and over in the game. So Earth is not a school, and that's the typical New Age belief. Then we have the Earth school is the most difficult in the universe. Only the bravest souls sign up. So I'm kind of debunking this, saying we did not sign up for this. And, Dolores Cannon is known to have in her books that she keeps re-emphasizing it in all her books, that there's a waiting list that is so high, you wouldn't even believe it, that when you reincarnate here, you are so lucky that you did, because the waiting list to reincarnate on Earth is so huge, has so many souls waiting to reincarnate. I don't believe that. I do want to psychically read on that. I might do that for a future video, because I believe that entire waiting list BS is legit, that, just wishy-washy, bamboozling your mind, making you feel special that you're here. Whereas there is no waiting list to come here. You were tricked to come here, and you're trapped in this hell called Earth, the Earth realm, which is very difficult to make it into a heaven, right? And then we have this one. There are many lessons to be gained on Earth. If certain ones are learned, it makes the others easier. Yeah, I don't think we're here for lessons. Whenever we do master a lesson or whatever, we're doing it because we don't know a different way out. Are we here to enjoy ourselves? I do think we can definitely make the best of the reincarnation we're in right now, but this is all just very misleading and false. And what's also striking to me is all the comments these posts get, because obviously they're super new agey. So a person commented on one of my posts, I put on my own fraud book, oh, Dolores Cannon, false white light guru, should I talk about in a video, which we're doing right now. But basically the person commented, I noticed that a lot of people following her page are having a lot of unhealed trauma and just really need to believe in something. And I do get that impression too when going through the comments. You know, it's the typical cult mentality of belonging to a cult and not knowing you belong to a cult because you're so entrapped in the mentality of the 5D new earth, whatever, salvation, you know. Earth is a school that we attend to learn lessons, but it's not the only school. You have lived on other planets and other dimensions. You have done many, many things you cannot even imagine. I find that very hard to believe. Our minds can imagine anything out there. So this is already putting a huge limitation on our imagination, which I don't really agree with. She mentioned this in the 3 waves of volunteers, which, okay, there could be 3 waves of something, but it's definitely not volunteers. It's 3 waves of being lured and tricked to come here. Have we lived on other planets and in other dimensions? I'm sure. I've seen a lot of Mars interaction, you know, Orion, Andromeda, all these things. Are they really other planets though? That's what I'm not sure about. Or is it just an extension of this realm we're in? And we're just made to believe that they're planets, because everything NASA is giving us is obviously very fake. So we don't even know if planets exist. You know, it's like it just goes down this huge other rabbit hole. So then, oh, now I have to go to this one. If you could meet your higher self, what would you ask it? The higher self emphasis, instead of just going within and asking your own intuition, is really what bothers me. And then you see the comments here. I would ask, how am I doing? It's quite likely we return to our higher self every night as we sleep. So you return to your own soul and intuition. Your higher self is something outside of you and probably has entities around you. Okay, it's not your higher self. The same with spirit guides, or how I like to call them, spirit misguides, which we made several videos on that. And so we're just going here. You know, Global Ascension Project presents Lionsgate portals to enlightenment. Yeah, I really want to talk about the Lionsgate portal deception. I already talked about it in a previous video last year, but it's basically just harvesting off your energy, and the entire ascension concept that you have to ascend to gain enlightenment is the most ridiculous thing ever once you're away from this new age trap. Because even like Buddhists don't believe in the ascension or whatever, you find enlightenment within you, right? You don't find it by ascending somewhere. So it's all very much so far outside of you. You know, okay, yeah, do this, do that to ascend, but don't ever just go within, communicate with your own soul, body, mind, spirit. This is insane, you guys. They're putting so many blocks in my throat while I'm saying that. That's very hard to articulate myself. So I have to drink a glass of water. And this is how you know they don't want the information to get out there. And this is how I know there's some form of infiltration with the entire canon narrative, because this is very intense what's happening. I didn't have this with other review videos. So the entire ascension wish-wash is just there to mislead more people. So you have Tracy from the Arcturian collectives and their message to Earth, you know, like all of this new age stuff where, why do we need the Galactic Federation of Evilness to give us messages? Why do we need other AI beings to give us messages? We already know, right? So they really want to always take us outside of ourselves, because we actually already have all the answers within us. If we have a soul, if we're not AI, we have all the answers within us, but they don't want us to know. And so they need people like this showing us something else. Earth shift to 5D. So this is a typical Dolores Cannon concept. And I was really buying into this in 2014. I was all about it. I'm like, I'm not going to be in 3D anymore. I am so happy. I'm almost in 5D. I have 1 foot in 5D. You know, I was at my job and everything being like, yeah, you're so 3D, blah, blah. You know, you really do feel a bit superior to others once you know this stuff. And that's really dangerous in my opinion, because that's also how a lot of people just lose their relatives, friends, whatever, because all of a sudden you're part of this cult mentality and they can't really make sense of you, right? As the new Earth approaches, our way of thinking is being challenged more and more. The veil is thinning and lifting as our consciousness expands. So a whole bunch of empty words, honestly. This is a requirement for entering the new dimension with the raising of our vibrations and frequencies. There's so many trigger words in this small sentence already that it basically just wants me to vomit or faint or whatever. But the old paradigms and archaic belief systems must fall to the wayside to make room for the new. I believe this sentence already talks about how we should erase every single bit of our history, which is basically the reshaping, reshaping and erasing of our history has been happening for so long, so that we don't remember how powerful we really were in the future, right? So Dolores Cannon Pugliese said that in one of her books. Now you already know I don't agree with anything she says here. It's filled with a bunch of nothingness. Yeah, you just blow up a balloon, there's nothing but air in it, and that's what this feels like, you know? Okay, so what happens in 5D? What's my life going to look like? How am I going to nourish myself? How am I going to earn money? Do I need to earn money? You know, those kind of, like, no one ever gives you the answers to that, which is always so fascinating to me. But of course, you need to ascend into 5D. The same life lessons will keep presenting themselves over and over again until you learn from them and commit to making a change. See, there's always like a little bit of truth in it. Of course, you're not going to make the same mistakes over and over again. Otherwise, you would be a bit backwards. But these aren't lessons. These are challenges thrown your way to throw you off and disconnect you from your soul. At least that's what I've gotten, right? Especially the trauma that people are thrown at, you know, from like childhood on, like the disconnect to their parents or like being bullied at school. That's not a life lesson. That's a trauma they're throwing at you, a reptilian trauma or other types of traumas. In order for you to have the worst life ever or to diminish the power of your mind and to really disconnect you from your soul. It's not a life lesson. It's to make your life a living hell because you're a targeted individual. We are all a piece of the great cosmic puzzle, delicately interconnected. With even one piece missing, the great picture falls apart, or the greater picture falls apart. This is part of the New Age trap, being like, we are all one love for all, or something like that, you know, like the hippie mentality they had in Woodstock or whatever. Yeah, I do agree there's a little bit of wisdom in it, but I actually could do without all of these background people and soulless beings and robotoids. So I don't care if those fall away. Let's put it that way. It wasn't a waste of time if you learned something. See, they're giving you a little bit of truth with a few of these quotes where it's like, yeah, of course it wasn't. You learned that it was a mistake, you know, or you learned your lesson, whatever. And here, a soul retrieval exercise. So I had a person contact me asking me, like, not in regards to my sessions or anything, but just in general, a question where she believes someone retrieved a false piece of her soul and she's now running around with a soul piece that's not hers. Just to give you an idea of how awry it can go when you do a few of these exercises, maybe. I'm not saying every single time, but it could very well be, I don't know. Is suffering really necessary? I love this question because the New Age comes out right here. Yes and no. So in my opinion, no, suffering is not necessary. Suffering is something created that AI created in order to keep you trapped here, to keep you in the trauma, and to keep your soul so traumatized that you have to return over and over again. So her answer is, if you had not suffered as you have, there would be no depth to you as a human being, no humility, no compassion. You would not be reading this now. Suffering cracks open the shell of ego, and then comes a point when it has served its purpose. Suffering is necessary. I can't even read the rest here. Got to pull this down. Until you realize it's unnecessary. So of course, this is Eckhart Tolle giving you his full opinion on suffering. Eckhart Tolle has a highly reptilian energy to me. And he's another New Age guru that might be worth exposing somehow. I know other people have. I read his books. They did help me in the beginning, once again, but that was pretty much it. You know, like, you're supposed to be meditating every single day according to him and not be acting on a single thing. Great advice, Eckhart Tolle. Great advice to make someone complacent. Here's another one from Albert Einstein. In German, it's Albert Einstein, which he was German, obviously. So Albert Einstein was a PEDO, if you guys had not known that yet. I highly doubt he's created anything really, including the relativity theory. I'm pretty sure someone else did that and they just put him as the face of all of that. He was into younger women, like teenagers. There's even this really creepy picture where one of his daughters is sitting on his lap at a certain age. She's not like a 5-year-old or anything, but she's legit, you know, a young adult. And everyone commenting below that is, this picture's creepy. What's going on, Albert Einstein? You know, so something very wrong with the Einsteins. Maybe they were part of a trafficking network or whatever. Very creepy. I don't believe the story at all that he was a genius. He does not look like a genius to me. So I'm not going to read his quote. I just wanted to point this out. So this is the stuff that's being shared on her page. I know it's not necessarily from her. If you could telepathically say something to all 7.9 billion people on Earth right now, what would it be? This is funny because I got the number we're getting, like the 8 billion people, is false somehow. We're either not that many, or if we are, a lot of them just don't matter at all. But I don't think we are 8 billion people. Because I'm in the biggest city in the US, I keep running into the same people over and over again. And for sure, you know, there's, oops, I don't know what happened here. Okay, for sure, I don't believe we're 8 billion people. So that was interesting because that was like a splintering off of screens. It's almost like they're putting us in parallel universes to make us believe we're 8 billion people is what I'm getting just from that. You know, I don't even have to channel my spirit guides or angels or archangels or demons to get higher insight on that. So I think that was pretty much it for now. Let me go through these quotes again. Yeah, stop the share. You know, in short, I have experience with her method. Have I met her in person? No. Have I met people in person who have trained under Dolores Cannon? Yes. One of them had a good opinion. The other one was like, I knew she was going to die very soon because she kind of looked that way in 2014. And I'm like, okay, that's fair. I've read her books. I've read Julia Cannon's books. They are building up their huge network, their huge realm, their business, which is nice. You know, when people do that, it's just under the pretenses of something I don't agree with at all. There's a whole bunch of trigger words, New Age concepts that are misguiding and misleading people. And also, in a lot of these sessions, they're just randomly channeling these entities into it, you know, into that hypnosis session, calling it your higher self or oversoul, whatever, when it clearly isn't. Because sometimes during the sessions, when you read the actual transcripts of it, which are mentioned in the books she has, it's like, we don't agree with her having done, you know, those kinds of things. I'm like, who's we? That's not an oversoul speaking. That's not a higher self speaking. That's a demon speaking, or that's like a spirit misguide or whatever speaking, or some sort of ET AI interference that's speaking. So they called this in during the sessions, and now people have those attached to them probably for the rest of their life or until they notice they don't. And these entities are riding off of their energy, and these entities are feasting off of these hypnosis sessions too, just like they did when I was put into the QHHT at one point. So I hope this helps. Let me know what you think. If it triggers you, this channel is probably not for you. That's all I have to say. You know, for the past 2 years, we've been doing anything to wake up people from the New Age deception. If you still haven't gotten the memo and the message, I would say you don't belong here. But if you gotten the memo and the message, welcome to this channel. Let me know what you think. I don't have patience to argue with people. I can already tell you that much. It's been a heat wave here in New York. You know, there's a lot of anger coming through from people around me because it's so hot. So I certainly do not have the patience to argue with you. I can already tell you that much. If you agree, if you don't agree, that's another thing, but I'm not going to sit here and listen to your New Age, you know, cult mentality berating this video or whatever. I think the points that I mentioned were pretty fair. If you do not believe so, you should go back to your cult mentality and see how it destroys your life, because that's literally what it does.